Due to Saudi Arabia's alliance with China and the U.S. economy collapsed. This will be the main focus of the video today. Saudi Arabia has made it plain that it would not alter its energy strategy in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. President Biden and the leaders of oil importing nations have frequently asked Saudi Arabia to raise output more quickly. Recent monthly meetings of the OPEC Plus group have taken less than 15 minutes to agree on a continuance of the strategy set in place last year, which is a fundamental reason why the U.S. and its partners in the IEA released strategic oil stocks. Even though Aramco tends to zealously preserve its market share among big Asian growth markets, a significant shift of Russian oil to India, and a commensurate decline in Indian purchases of Saudi oil haven't aroused a public response from Saudi oil executives. Although Saudi Arabia's ties to the United States are at an all-time low, the monarchy has benefited greatly from its membership in OPEC with Russia. Saudi Arabia's GDP expanded at its quickest rate in over 10 years in the first quarter, thanks to rising oil prices increasing by an annualized 9.6%. The monarchy and its allies in the area have refrained from voting or opposed us in European resolutions that sought to isolate Russia. Therefore, under pressure, oil users must search elsewhere for respite. Is it the complete tale, though? Perhaps the Saudis are being cooperative in the background. The kingdom determines the price for its crude oil exports each month, but Saudi Aramco, the state-owned oil firm, does not reveal its pricing choices. Reporters with initiative can obtain quotations from Saudi clients. These estimates do not represent a specific cost. As opposed to this, Aramco establishes a differential for each grade of oil in relation to regional benchmark crudes for Asia, Europe, and the US. For instance, Brent, 90 cents per barrel was fixed as the price for Arab Light sold to Europe for delivery in March. With offices in major cities across the world, Saudi Aramco's global marketing department continuously monitors regional oil market movements, allowing them to fine-tune differentials depending on slight regional changes in market fundamentals. For instance, if Asian markets want more diesel fuel, Aramco may charge more for crudes that produce a larger proportion of diesel. It is a very effective and knowledgeable organization that enables Aramco to maximize profits from oil sales within the parameters of the energy minister's established strategy. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Aramco's regional pricing have painted an extremely intriguing image of Saudi intentions over the past 3 months, one that may be at variance with the kingdom's official position for supplies in both March and April. Saudi pricing for exports to Asia rose to all-time highs. Importantly, this does not indicate a high level of regional demand. Renewed COVID-related shutdowns have had an impact on Chinese demand. And as was already mentioned, India drastically increased its imports of Russian oil while drastically decreasing its purchases of Saudi crude. In these conditions, the kingdom should reduce its regional differentials relative to Europe and the US, while Aramco's European and American differentials have grown in order to retain sales in a regional Asian market that is deteriorating. For the Arab media, they have not grown as quickly as Asian differentials. The nearest alternative to Urals, the principal Russian export mix, is Saudi crude. Why then would Asian differentials rise so quickly in comparison to those in the Atlantic basin? Recall that within the parameters established by the energy minister, Aramco establishes regional differentials to maximize income. Aramco prices if Saudi decision. Makers opt for a strategy that shifts petroleum from one market to another. For decades, from the middle of the 1970s until the beginning of the 2000s, it was difficult to achieve that goal. In order to become the leading supplier to the US, the monarchy routinely offered discounts on crude shipments. In other words, recent differentials may be a covert attempt to replace Russian supply with crude smuggled into Europe. Other Middle Eastern suppliers may also be cooperating, given the increased reluctance of European firms to buy Russian oil without openly taking a side in a disagreement involving a crucial OPEC Plus partner. Similar to this, the UAE is covertly sending additional oil to Europe. On one level, it is the way things ought to operate. There is a huge oil market and merchants are highly inventive. To account for continually shifting local supply-demand balances, the global system is constantly modifying regional pricing and flows. While it's comforting that everything is operating as it should, Saudi Arabia's price decisions also suggest that something isn't just happening naturally. Rather, the kingdom is making this decision consciously. And it's true that this isn't a strategy to increase the supply of barrels on the market. However, it does seem to be a strategy to facilitate European purchasers' attempts to cut back on purchases of Russian oil. This makes it appear like efforts are being made more to prevent future price volatility than to cut prices. Will the kingdom stick to this course of action? Will it put up with losing market share to Russia in Asia's burgeoning markets, which would go against its long-term strategic goals? Are these pricing decisions an intentional policy decision or a marketing ploy? How would the Saudis respond to a complete U-ban on buying Russian oil? Only time will tell, especially given that neither the Saudi government nor Aramco have made a public declaration and that the pricing formulae are disclosed each month. Not much time will be required to tell, but for now, this may be a hint of silent collaboration from the Saudis as the U.S. Congress and administration ponder punitive measures targeted at the kingdom and its allies for driving up global oil prices. Due to the silence, that is easily missed. You may have your Patriot missiles in February 2021, which will be Biden's first full month in office. Before arriving in Riyadh in July, the new government prohibited the sale of offensive weapons to Saudi Arabia. According to the Biden administration, the embargo may be lifted if Saudi Arabia ended its hostilities with Yemen. According to a statement from the Defense Secretary Cooperation Agency, on August 3rd, the State Department indicated that the defense contract transaction may go through. For more than $3 billion, Saudi Arabia will purchase 300 Raytheon Patriot missiles. Washington, though, would never admit it. It appears that the U.S. lifting its export prohibition on offensive weapons was the cause of this oil agreement. The U.S. had the opportunity to claim it was a good agreement since, at the very least, the ceasefire with Yemen was prolonged. US oil imports increased. Yemen achieved peace. Saudi Arabia received its defense contract, and Raytheon will profit $3 billion from it. The price of oil is declining. Late in the second quarter, speculators who raised prices have made money. For the moment, the market has stabilized. Oil market predictions are discussed by investors via social media and over the water cooler on Wall Street. However, not all of the increase in oil prices since the Ukraine incursion can be attributed to the Biden-Saudi Accord, which is cause for concern. The world economy is contracting. China is in poor condition. Technically, the U.S. economy is in a recession. For the time being, oil futures have been restrained by weakening global demand. However, if Stephen Shork is right, the little price slump won't likely endure for very long. Next year, according to OPEC, the world's oil consumption will grow by 1 million barrels per day, more than the growth in supply. The International Energy Agency in Paris anticipates that even if Western nations led by Europe attempt to achieve carbon emission extinction by 2030, oil consumption will continue to rise, approaching pre-pandemic projections, i.e., in a very straight upward line. In order to balance supply and demand in 2023, OPEC estimates that its members would need to deliver an average of 30.1 million barrels per day, which is almost 1 million barrels per day more than member nations produced in June. Russia is not in a rush to overproduce given the economic turmoil brought on by the sanctions. Given that Europe has been telling the Saudis for the past few years that it no longer wants their toxic fuel, the Saudis are hesitant to sell them their oil and would rather strike deals with the Chinese. The good news is that the U.S., which is not a part of OPEC, can handle this situation better than Europe. Simply put, a change in trade channels resulted from Europe's decision to halt oil commerce with Russia. While acquiring Russian oil for domestic consumption, Saudi Arabia exported more of its oil to international markets. When initial predictions were for a double-digit decline and a prolonged recession, this arrangement allowed Russia's economy to drop just 4% in the second quarter. Furthermore, Russia is now China's top oil exporter, surpassing Saudi Arabia. India's daily imports of Russian oil have climbed from nearly nothing to over 760,000 barrels. There is little likelihood that Washington or Brussels will be able to persuade Saudi Arabia to leave Russia. They will keep importing Russian goods while also marketing their premium oil to an anxious, suicidal Europe. Investors have common sense. They will focus on the economies with the lowest energy prices. Money from businesses and portfolios will go there. Wait! Here's one more secret news. Europe is doomed. Russia crazy plan to destroy EU economy. The world is shocked. Don't waste your time, just click it.